Okay, today we're gabbing with Chelsea Stark Jones, co-host of The Ringer's We're Obsessed, and a producer on The Ringer's Morally Corrupt with Rachel Lindsay. She's here for our end of season deep dive on Summer House season 8. I know you've been waiting for it. It just aired part 2 last night. We're recording this on Friday. Chelsea, there's so much to discuss. Thank you for being here. How are you?
Oh my God, Gibson. When you asked me if I could gab with you, I was so thrilled. I am such a big fan and supporter of yours. So I am great. I'm okay. The summer house last part of the reunion was quite a disappointment for me. I feel like it was very one-sided
Me
and
too.
like very much an attack on my girl Linz. And I was just not ready for that.
No, I wasn't ready for that. And I tweeted that I thought it should be 3 parts because it just, and not even just because of that. Like, I think that Lindsay had a lot of things that she had to be held accountable for, right? Like, there were a lot of
Yeah.
things that she had to answer for that happened in this season and that happened since the show was filmed, all those things. But it just felt like there was like all this stuff that was left on the table that would just not was not discussed. And I think if there had been more space for more
Yeah.
Kyle and Amanda talk, more holding Carl accountable, things like that, it wouldn't have felt as one-sided. But because it was just 2 parts, the second part was just like the Lindsay pile-on show.
Yes, it very much was. I needed more on Kyle and Amanda. We did not get into him calling his wife a fucking bitch. We like very much was graced over. And Andy is notorious for letting the boys off the hook.
Mm,
He does it with Southern Charm, he does it with Summer House, he does it with VPR. And it's very frustrating on a majority female
right.
watch network to see these men have horrible behavior and rarely ever have to account for it. And so yeah, I was very disappointed that we didn't pry more into the Kyle and Amanda of it all. That we didn't get more of what Carl did wrong in the relationship. And when it was discussed about him getting a job, I was like, well, Lindsay, you're an influencer, he's an influencer, so what's the difference? And the difference is I invested in a career coach for this man and he ain't got no career. So that's the difference. He wants something more than just being an influencer. And if you're going to waste my time and energy in helping you get to this point and you're just gonna like do whatever, like no, that's not okay.
Right. It's like she has expressed the fact that like she actually actively decided to pause her PR company so that she could just like, can pursue being an influencer and like embrace being on the show and just like kind of milk it for what it's worth until it kind of runs dry. Whereas he
Yeah.
has always felt like he's lost and he wants more direction. And he's not like that's not what he wants out of life. And also, she's talked about how she set up most of his brand deals for him. You know what I mean? So it's
Yes.
like he only
And
has
it's
most of those because of her.
And it's frustrating because we're getting that on the podcast circuit and not on the reunion stage. And maybe that
Yeah.
is something that was spoken about. But like, yeah, I heard that on another podcast that Lindsay was on. I also have a better understanding as to why she isn't doing her PR for restaurants anymore because of a podcast she was on. It's like
Right.
we're not getting her back or like her rationale. Like, yeah, it is a little bit weird. You were like this top PR firm woman and now you're not. And hearing that she did PR for restaurants and COVID happened, and then when it came back, it was a lot less, you
Right.
know, you know, I don't know if I got that from your pocket, but I was just like, yeah, that makes sense as to why she wouldn't do PR for restaurants anymore,
Right.
because she makes more money doing the other thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
just feel like we're not getting the full story, and the reunion is supposed to be the time for that.
Exactly, exactly. And I thought part 1 was so good. I think that's also kind of what made part 2 all the more
Yeah.
disappointing, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get too far into the weeds with this stuff, I do just want to
Okay.
hear from you. Like, you host a podcast called We're Obsessed. Were you
Yeah.
were you as obsessed with this season of Summer House as it seemed like? I mean, I definitely was. It seemed like it was like the show on Bravo for the past couple months.
I was extremely obsessed. Me and my co-host Jody Walker, who also hybrids between Morally Corrupt, our Bravo podcast, was also very obsessed. Our whole Morally Corrupt team was very obsessed. Yeah, it was such an amazing season. And I think why it caught me off guard and I was so into it is because when they released the trailer at BravoCon, I was not obsessed. I was like, this looks really boring.
Right, right. It was like this
And
weird clip from a random party, and it was like, this is what we're
yeah.
getting? Yeah,
Yes. And it was just like, and all we knew from the season was Carl and Lindsay, like no idea that Ciara would have a fling, no idea that Kyle and Amanda were having this tumultuous time in their relationship. Um, and there was just so much that we just didn't know. And you've raised this point online and on your podcast of the not knowing makes the seasons so much better. All the leaks, all
Yes.
the stuff, like not knowing about Monica Garcia in Salt Lake City made that finale so much better. Not knowing about I mean, Lindsay did leave breadcrumbs when she
Yes.
first broke up with Carl, but like I still felt watching the season, I had no idea how we got from we're engaged and the happiest couple on Bravo to we're breaking off the wedding 2-3 months beforehand.
Yeah.
So like watching everything that went into how they got to that point week in and week out was so fascinating. Not knowing about West and Ciara until the reunion was also very like interesting.
Yes.
And so yeah, it was such a good season. It was probably the best since Paige and Hannah's first season.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. It was
The
so good.
pandemic season was also good, I thought, but I agree. It's like this is just felt like the culmination of so many things I felt.
Yeah.
So let's kind of use the reunion. Let's discuss the reunion, but also use it as a way to like talk about what we saw in the season. And I want to
Okay.
start with Wes and Sierra because that was really the focus and the highlight, I think. Not the highlight, the standout stuff from part one of this reunion.
Yeah.
I loved them all season. He got something out of her that we hadn't seen in a while, which is like a giddiness, a really like just like smiling a lot more, and she
I
was
don't
being
think we've
open.
seen ever from
Right, to
Ciara.
this level
Yeah.
for sure. And
Yeah.
like it was just so fun to see. We were rooting for them. Again, we didn't know where it all netted out, but he was kind of simultaneously, I think, kind of because of the Sierra stuff, but also separately. I think Wes was also kind of creating his own thing in his own right outside of
Yeah.
Sierra. I think it was kind of a balance of those two things, but he was kind of becoming the golden boy. He was the guy, he was the new number one guy in the group, according to the New York Times. And then the cracks started to show. They went when the horseback riding scene sticks out of like seeing some hints of the fuck boy stuff. That there was a conversation with Jesse in the car where he's talking about like talking to other girls. Like that's sort of where I think
Yeah.
the question mark started to pop up. And then we get to the reunion, we find out everything that happened. What do you like? What was your reaction to finding out what really happened between them? And I don't know, like, what surprised you the most about it?
Nothing.
Oh, no, you were not surprised.
No, Gibson, my background, I've worked 10 plus years for the NFL. I've worked
Mm,
around a lot of media bros. West,
say
I know
more.
that guy.
Okay.
Like I knew I pegged him. I was like, I I just couldn't see him and Ciara taking themselves seriously outside of the summer house. And I just like a young under 30-year-old man in New York City that's single that works in sports. Like, I'm
Right.
sorry, he's not settling down. Like he's just not. Like I know that. So yeah, it didn't surprise me too much, but the things and the way in which he moved is what was disappointing. Where it's like, just be honest. Like, and it was I forget if it was the party that he threw. So I think it was the last party of the weekend when he was like, I call all my friends baby. Like it
Right.
was just very clear that this man has no lines between friendship and relationship.
Hmm.
Um, and that's a red flag. And just like this, the way in which he talks about things. Like I didn't think taking someone to a wedding was a big deal. I didn't think taking someone to meet my parents is a big deal. Like I'm sorry, if I were his parents, I'd be like, do not introduce me to a girl unless it's your girlfriend. Like we're not playing
Right.
this game, and I'm not going to be a pawn in your little scheme of trickery,
Right. And so how do you react to like, because I feel like I have seen some people put some of the onus on Sierra for like thinking that she wanted to change, that she could change him or she could be the one to help him settle down. And like, I think it's a little unfair to her personally. I think it's sort of like she was caught up, like she caught feelings for this guy. And I don't know. People like when she said that she would potentially get back together with him if she saw real change in him. There was like some people online like doing a collective groan, but I'm sort of like, I don't know, like it's still very fresh. They just watched this entire season. She had to
Yeah.
relive. she had to relive the exciting and fun parts of their relationship all over again.
And look, and they jumped on Jesse for saying this, but he didn't do anything that terribly wrong. Like, he didn't cheat on her
Right.
that we know of. He didn't, like, kill one of her cats. Like, it was just horrible communication, bad timing. And I wouldn't say that I put the onus on her as to thinking she was going to change him. And we said this on Morally Corrupt, I think she just was trying to be the cool girl and not
Mm,
have that conversation of what are we? Are we exclusive? Are we like, and she kind of did have that in the horseback riding. It was more of like, I'm not going to pursue this unless you feel this way. But it sounds as if they never had the exclusivity talk until several months in. And like, I would have had that talk before going to a wedding.
hmm.
Like, am I your girlfriend that you're
Right.
taking to this wedding? Are you introducing me to people as your girlfriend, or am I just your date? Like,
But I guess they did have that conversation where she gave him the out, apparently, which I thought,
yeah,
which is not that
yeah,
conversation, but it's a different kind of conversation.
yes, where he didn't take the out.
Yeah. Right.
And so yeah, I just think he could have handled things a lot better. I'm not blaming her for anything. I just think there's times as girls where we're like afraid to be like, so are you sleeping with
Yeah.
anyone?
Yeah.
Like,
Totally.
is it just you and I? Are you texting it? Like, we want to seem cool and chill and like whatever. Like, text whoever you want. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think there is a part of that with her.
Yeah, and we also found out that he like objectively lied to Paige about when she asked if he was sleeping with other women that summer. He said no to her in the moment, and he admitted on the reunion that he was. I think a huge aspect of the emotions that we saw from Ciara and sort of and also the emotion we saw from Paige, honestly, in her defense was like also based around everything that was built up as the season aired. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
he was getting all this coverage. He was the golden boy. He was the new fan fave. He was the hottest guy on Bravo. Like that was like the stuff. He was getting New York Times coverage that she's never
Yeah.
gotten. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
it's like I think that it makes it hurt even more almost when you see that, you know?
Yeah, it does. And it it may be in one of those articles that West was talking about um how surprised he was that
Yeah.
Ciara felt so hurt by everything because he felt them ending their relationship was amicable. And it's almost that like rookie move of like this guy doesn't realize like she maybe did feel like the relationship ended amicably, but she watched the season back and she remembered how much she really liked you and she's seeing things you said in the confessional and in the after show and all this stuff. So like all these feelings are getting dredged up again.
Yep.
And so it's very hard. And yeah, for him and Jesse, they're going to learn for as however long they're going to be on the show that these things like these feelings last longer than the summer or when like it's a year-round process
Right.
until
Totally.
you
It's
can
like
move on from
it,
something.
it doesn't remain static, you know,
No.
it doesn't. And like
Yeah.
obviously I was really shocked that he didn't come in with sort of like at least some sort of prepared apology. You know what I mean? At
Oh my
least just
gosh.
like at least just something that like was well worded, but he couldn't really string any words together. We saw him making all these faces. And like I mean, I think that it's almost like a little disrespectful to Ciara that he didn't
Oh
even
my
like consider
gosh.
that, you know?
Him in that oversized suit, looking like a little boy in his dad's like suit was so embarrassing. His facial expressions, like it's funny. We were talking about how all the women on the show were like showing full on torso.
Right.
Like, and we were like, how are they going to sit in that? Like, when you're at a reunion, you want a sitting dress, not a standing dress. They all slayed sitting down, like me rolls everywhere. Them, like, flex. And I was just watching West and I was like, that is not a sitting suit. That is a
No.
standing suit, sir. You look like a clown. You're acting like a clown. I understand nerves and like the unknown, but like educate yourself. Watch
Yeah.
reunion before going into this reunion, like have a better and yeah, it was disrespectful to Ciara that he kind of just looked like a deer in headlights when she
Yeah.
was saying how she felt about things. And he kind of was just God, his excuses were so fucking dumb. The watch parties, the DMs, the everything. And he was saying on the Nick Vile podcast that he agreed with that sentiment of like it being like, yeah, that was stupid of me to say, but I still, I mean, I guess overall it was just he just didn't want to be in a relationship. Like
Right. Yeah,
that's what
he
it
couldn't
seems like
admit
it.
that.
Yeah, and that and it does seem childish, but again, he's a man under 30 in New York City. Like, why would he want to be in a
Right,
relationship?
right. And it's like he has shown like in these couple interviews that have been published since then, like he seems to get it a little bit more now. I
Yeah.
think that he's going to go into the second season being really aware of where he went wrong. And I'm so curious how that's going to like manifest itself and what we see from him. And like, yeah, I think it was cocky. He was high on his own supply. It was disrespectful to Ciara. But I also think there is something a little bit in there. There's something refreshing that he didn't prepare, that he just sort of like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like he's not. I'm not trying to give him too much credit, but like there is something in there that it's like, you know what? Like that was
This is
how he
me.
came in. Yeah, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. That is refreshing. Like he's thirsty but not dehydrated, I guess. Like
So eloquently said.
yeah.
And you know what? Paige said she was on Chicks in the Office, and I was a quick listen, and she said she was like, even Paige was saying, Jesse and West are so good for the show. Like
Yeah.
he did my friend wrong, but I'm glad he's here, kind of thing. And so
Yeah.
with I always say Jess and Westy for some reason. With Jesse and West, they came in on this as this duo, right? And like
Yeah.
they're kind of the Kyle and Carl Jr., but like a little bit more a little bit more emotionally intelligent. We saw some more vulnerability from them.
Yeah.
They played ball. They opened up. What do you want to see from them in a second season? Like, what do you kind of expect? Because I'm they're definitely both coming back.
Gosh, what would I want to see? So I don't necessarily know if I want to see Ciara and Wes get back together. I would like to see them be friends with one another.
Right.
I would like to see a season of like, what'd you say, Wesley and Just? I would like to see them being like bros and wingmans and like going out with one another. I
Totally.
would maybe even like to see a new girl come in and for Jesse to have a housemate fling and see how that plays out. But I do enjoy them. I think they're funny. I think they're great additions to the house. I don't think what Wes did was like I feel like everyone online is getting so up in arms of
I
like never
know.
trust a man again. And it's like
It's not Scandival.
it's not Scandival and it's honestly just lessons in dating. Like
Yes,
we've
exactly.
all been there. Like and so what he did doesn't crucify him. It doesn't make him the worst guy to be on Bravo. We've seen plenty. So yeah,
Yeah.
I want to see them continue said friendship. And I would like to see him and Wes and Sierra get back to a place of like good friends. I don't think
And
I
see
need
them
them to
work
like
towards that. Yeah,
yeah.
that'd be
Yeah, I don't
interesting.
think I need to see them dating. Unless Sierra's really into it and he
Right.
has changed, sure. But like
That's pretty quick to
I'm not,
change.
yeah, I'm not putting my money on change.
I thought Paige actually made a really interesting point when she was on this podcast I was listening to, where she basically said she compared how West and Jesse have been, you know, again, celebrated as this amazing duo that has come in, like they've breathed new life into the show, right?
Hmm.
Paige came in as a duo with Hannah 5 seasons ago, and they were treated very differently. Hannah was the like framed as like the lame up and coming comedian. You know, Paige was like framed as like the wannabe fashion influencer, and it's like
Yeah.
they kind of had the last laugh, honestly. And they also they breathed new life into the show in season 3, by the way. So it's interesting, I think, the different ways they were received over, you know?
When Paige brought that up, I was completely like I had to check my misogyny.
No, totally.
I was
Totally.
like, oh yeah, like I immediately loved Paige when she first joined, and I kind of liked Hannah, but I wasn't like as into her
Right.
as I was into Jesse and West. And I thought she raised a really interesting and good point. Um, but again, it's us female viewers that fall for the dumb, gullible guys, you know.
The women
And
and the
we're
gays.
competitive
Yeah.
with our own girls. So
Yeah.
it's I think
Makes
that
sense.
plays a little
Yeah.
part into it
Right.
too.
Well, seeing Paige defend Sierra and kind of make that point about, you know, not living their lives for the show, like that was just like that's going to live on as a moment, I think, going
Yeah.
forward. It was like so perfectly said. It was so well timed, just like so well put. And she deserved all the praise she got for that moment.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you what you think about how much praise she got for that and defending her friend. Kyle and Amanda defended Carl a lot on this reunion. But when Gabby defends Lindsay, she gets
It's
called
a
a puppet.
problem. Yeah.
And yeah, what do you think of that?
I think it's completely unfair because, as you said, Kyle was going hard at Lindsay in part two of the reunion, and no one was telling him to reel it in, to slow down. I feel like we heard from Kyle more than we did from Carl about their breakup. Um, so I do think it's a really unfair uh notion to put Gabby down for speaking up for Lindsay, while Paige and Amanda and Kyle could do so for their, friends, alliances, whatever. However, I will say I don't want to see Gabby turn into the Danielle of the show,
Right, right.
where she is only there to be Lindsay's friend or mouthpiece. And I don't want to say mouthpiece, but friend. Like I hope Gabby returns, and I hope that we see more of her and get a little bit more from her, because I like her. I actually find her to be extremely
Me too.
interesting and funny and witty. So I appreciate her standing up for Lindsay, but I would like to see more, and I hope the producers in the show give her more room to grow uh on her own and allow her to stand on her own 2 feet and not just be Lindsay's defender all the time.
That's a really good point. It's like it's kind of like sometimes it feels like the only thing we're getting from her, essentially.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's
And
maybe
I
why it
and
lands
maybe
differently.
yeah, maybe, but I still think she has a great
Oh,
personality.
me
Like
too.
when it was Lindsay and Danielle for the longest time, I didn't know Danielle as well. So I think it like kind of, and I just don't want to see Gabby fall
Yeah,
into that trope.
very valid, very valid. I've seen a
Yeah.
little bit of fan commentary online this morning, and that's sort of why I wanted to actually wait to record this until I have it come out next week, because like I think the fan response like really makes you think in a different way. And I saw some people commenting about how like they're comparing Lindsay and Paige, and how Lindsay has like really lived her life on the show. Like she's
Mm-hmm.
really let us in a lot of ways, and like a lot of like
Yeah.
intense breakups and like a miscarriage and calling off an engagement, all these things. And if you think about what we've seen from Paige, and when you compare it that way, like she hasn't opened up in this to the same level. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And we know less about Paige's life, I think. You know, she's an amazing voice of the people. She's an amazing friend. We know about her relationship with Craig, but it's pretty steady, you know. And I
Yeah.
think they have it figured out. And we've been talking about this like long distance aspect of their relationship for like on 3 different seasons of 3 different shows, basically for
Yeah,
a
where
while. So it's like
I'm getting
nothing's really
bored.
moved, right? And so it's
Yeah.
sort of like, and I think that that actually makes her this person was saying how it sort of actually makes her more likable to the general viewer, because there's less to potentially make her unlikable. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
you know, there's less to complicate the image of Paige, and I think that that's she's been very savvy to make it that way. So all that to say, what do you make of that, and like what would you want to see from her to mix it up going forward?
Yes. So Paige is the perfect reality star prototype if you're wanting to enter reality TV and not destroy your life. Like she has figured it out,
Completely.
where she's funny and witty, she dresses nice, and she is a good friend. And like those are all things that you enjoy watching. I like looking at her. I like hearing her commentary. I like seeing her stand up for her friends. And I'm not watching her thinking like, man, when is she gonna like call it off with Craig or move to
Right.
Charleston or make him move to New York? Like, I don't necessarily care. And when they do talk about it, I'm bored because I know it's going to be surface level stuff. Um, and so I think she's really smart in that and has done a really good job of creating a brand and a niche outside of Summer House,
I agree.
as well as and built and translating that onto the show. Um, but I and you do need someone like Lindsay who is willing to be messy and say crazy shit about sandwiches and activation and be willing to ruin your life on television. Like you need both of those people to make reality TV work. If we had all Paiges and all Lindsays, it would be too much or too
Right.
boring. So the they complement each other well, and we need each of them. But I would like to see from Paige moving forward. I guess I'm kind of contradicting myself. Like I would like to see some type of movement from the Craig and her part
Yeah.
of the life of her life. Because it is get like, look, like I can't really speak. Like I was with my husband for 8 years before we got engaged. So like I can't be like, Paige, when are you getting
You
engaged?
see
Like
yourself
let's
in
go.
Paige in some ways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like and we lived together. Like I wasn't even trying to like move to one side of the state or the or country or the other. So like I understand, but there like I do wish we saw more or even just like had an understanding of the arguments that they get in. Cause I
Hmm.
think it was Chicks in the Office when she was saying they got back from Bravo or Winter House or something, and she said her and Craig got in a huge fight. I'm like, about
Right.
what? Like,
Yeah,
what you guys get a
totally.
huge
Good
fight
point.
about?
Good
Like,
call.
tell me.
Yeah.
Like, so those are things that I'd be more interested to like kind of be keened in on of like what are the fights they get into? Is it Craig's just sad that you're mean to him all the time, or like are they actual fights? You
I
know?
also feel like, I mean, and Craig's been on this like, upward trajectory of like cleaning up his image and like getting his life together and kind of laying the groundwork for like this like next era, I think, of like who he is and building himself up as like a businessman. I think it's a
Yeah,
lot of it, I think, is her influence on him. And I would actually love to hear about that. You know what I mean? I actually
yeah.
want to hear what those conversations are like and like how they sort of, because they've just done such a good job, like you said, of like, I don't know, laying this groundwork and like they
Like
both have
it's
off ramps, you know what I mean?
yeah.
If they want to take them, which
And
I don't want
even
them
with
to.
like no, and like even when Paige is on Southern Charm, like they'll say stuff of like Craig has said something about her not liking Shep or something. And it's like, okay, but tell me why she doesn't like Shep. What does
Yes.
Shep do? Like, and so they're very like surface level where they give us just enough, but I want more. And I think you alluded to this in your solo episode, but the whole Spritz Loverboy conversation like it has to happen
It
on
has
this
to.
next season. I will riot in the streets if we don't have a blow up drunken fight about Craig joining Spritz Society and Kyle like slamming him on Watch What Happens Live. I want the Watch What Happens Live flashback. I want an insert of Claudia calling Kyle a liar. Like I want all of that, and I want to see, and also the dynamic of how that would change Amanda and Paige's friendship.
Hmm.
Like they seem fine, but like, and that made me when I watched it on Watch What Happens Live, I literally was like, oh no, Kyle, like you're putting Amanda in such a horrible
Right.
position.
Totally.
Like that was the first thing I thought was like, this is so
Ugh.
unfair to Amanda.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't even care if it's true, but it's so unfair to Amanda because that's her good friend who is dating this man. Like, so yeah, the dynamics of it all will be so fascinating to
Yeah.
watch.
That should really be, and that could help create some movement for Paige. Totally. I think that's
Yeah,
too. So, okay, so let's jump over to Kyle and Amanda now that you bring them up. Um,
yeah.
what did you, I mean, we've seen fighting from them every single season of this show. So to me, like, I don't think we're fighting about different things, obviously, but like, it doesn't feel like, and this is not a criticism, but it doesn't feel different. It just feels like more of like the same sort of like level of fighting to me that we've seen from them. What did you make of their fights this season? And did you find yourself falling on one side or the other?
Oh, I'm strongly Team Amanda. I think she's the coolest girl in Bravo.
She's amazing.
I would want to be her friend IRL if I lived in New York. Would stalk her and like make her be my friend. We could sit in the apartment together with our dogs. Like I love Amanda.
She's amazing.
So yeah, I would be Team Amanda. I am Team Amanda in this. I think Kyle is so irrational. So um, gosh, like it's weird because I like him most times when he's sober. Like I think Kyle's like probably like a really fun guy. And oh my God, I saw them at BravoCon. Beautiful couple together, even with the mullet. Like they
Hmm.
both look stunning together. Um, so it's really frustrating to see their fights and how like volatile they get. And it mostly comes from Kyle, how he elevates them. And it is really when he's drinking. But I mean, the biggest thing with her just expressing like I want something for myself and him freaking out about it was really, really tough to see. It's just it's not and she said, I will still be with Loverboy, but I want to do something for myself. And for the reaction to not be support for him to not lead with love and support was very frustrating. It's like this is your husband, this is your wife. Like that is what you would expect from them when you go to them for something like this. So that was hard to watch. It was very frustrating this entire season to see him treat her
Yeah.
that way. And then also like the arguments that they would have, again, like they seem like normal, like, oh my God, like you're annoying me, shut up, type, like normal. But because they're on TV, because they're drunk most of the time, it like boils over to something else. So I don't want to hold too much of it against them, like the smaller ones, but like the overall thing of her wanting something for herself. And also her wanting to move to New Jersey. Like I'm with her. Like I'm ready to go to the suburbs too. Like, and so for him and the 4 a.m., oh my God, don't even get me started on going out till 4 a.m. Like all of that, like, no,
Yeah.
sir.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
absolutely not. Like, and
Yeah.
also one time he came home at 4 a.m. and he got back in bed with her. I'd be like,
Oh my
do not
God.
sleep in my bed. Do
She was like
not sleep in
five.
my
Yeah.
bed.
I think that's the night he cuddled with West.
Yeah, like get
No,
away
but
from me. You're
yeah, I
disgusting.
think with Amanda and Kyle, it's something that I've been saying for years about them, which is like there's always this sort of like on camera, off camera, in season, out of season tension, I think, with them. And then like
Hmm.
I think that their relationship is probably really steady and solid out of season. I don't think that they're partying that much. I don't think that she said he goes out till 4 a.m. outside of the summer like a couple times a year, basically. At some point she
Yeah.
said that, which like I don't know why you have to go out till 4 a.m., but it's not like it's happening every weekend with him
Yeah.
outside of the show. But like in past seasons, we would see her like drag him to the corner where the camera couldn't catch them talking, or she would be like, let's not
Hmm.
talk about this now. And I think that meant like, let's not talk about this on camera. And she
Hmm.
said on this reunion, she said that she was frustrated that he brought an argument that they had been having onto the show in the first weekend that they filmed this season. And that was just like, because she wanted to keep that sort of away from the cameras. And I totally
Hmm.
respect that and understand that concern, obviously. But there's this like compulsion to bring stuff up on camera because it's what drives their entire
Yeah.
financial life, right? Being on the show and
Yeah.
Loverboy and all this stuff. It's just this inherent tension with them. And I think if Amanda had her way, she wouldn't even want to be on the show anymore. You know what I mean? She doesn't seem
Oh,
like, well, not be on the show anymore, but I don't think that like this was her first choice of like a life. Like of like
income. Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
that like she always wanted a public life like this. You know what I mean? I think she's
Yeah.
done it because it came along and it's been really beneficial to her and her, her relationship and all these things. But she said I think she would love to just like go to New Jersey, be with the dogs, work on a swimsuit line, and like that be her life. And that would be a perfectly amazing life. But there's a tension there.
Yeah, there is a tension there. And I'm curious for you because you know them
Yeah.
more than I do and have had relationships with them for a long time. When Ciara said she doesn't know who Amanda is outside of Loverboy and Kyle, is that something that do you agree with that sentiment, or did you feel like Ciara was being a little bit harsh in saying that? Like, what was your perspective in
I
that
agreed with
comment?
the sentiment. I agree with the sentiment in that, like, even like literally, like every single time other than the first time I interviewed Amanda, which was in a group of people for season two,
Mm-hmm.
every other time I talked to Kyle and Amanda for Winter House or Summer House up until I think like last year, they were always paired together for press,
Mm-hmm.
always.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because I think that was part of an apprehension on her part to like have to like stand on her own and like answer for some of these things and probably answer for Kyle, I'm guessing. But it was never an option to interview them individually. It was always together. And that's
Mm-hmm.
changed recently. I think that is a reflection of like her mentality evolving and like being a little bit more sure of herself and all these things. But like I've had amazing one-on-one interactions with Amanda at like Bravo events and things like that. And like she's an amazing person with her own
Mm-hmm.
perspective. And like at the Watch What Happens Live party last week, like Kyle was working the room on one side, she was working the room on the other, and she was like, she was just like laughing him off because he was just like being a man of the people kind of person, you know what I mean? And she
Yeah.
was just like kind of posted up with some of the girls. So it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I see the sentiment, and I think that Sierra's delivery was like a little bit harsh,
Harsh. Yeah.
but like I think that the sentiment was valid, and I think Amanda agreed with that sentiment in some respect. I think that like it almost felt like somebody else had to voice it for her to like admit it openly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is something that she struggles with.
Yeah. And another part of the reunion that we didn't get, and why I think your argument for three parts is valid, is like we didn't dive into Kyle screaming at Paige and Ciara when they were advocating for
Mm-mm.
Amanda. We didn't get like, yeah, him saying, they don't understand
Calling
anything
her a
about a
bitch.
business because calling her a bitch. Like when he is angry, he is very condescending, and it's almost always condescending towards women. And so like it's frustrating to see him act this way on the show and never have to be held accountable for it in post reunion settings. And and I was, as I was watching the reunion too, I was like, they're grilling West. They are, so anti Lindsay, but like Paige is giving Kyle this pass, and part of me is wondering if it's like, as your friend, this is your husband, so I'm not going to go in on your husband because I'm a girl's girl, and this is your person. And I was sitting there because part of me was like, sometimes Paige would like, I don't know, I was
Yeah.
like, that has to be it. Like,
Yeah, I also wonder if she felt like I think that's probably part of it. I also think part of it's like she did it in the season in an extreme
yeah,
way. You're literally screaming across the house on behalf of Amanda. Like Paige has stuck up for Amanda to Kyle. Like she did that this season several times. But I would have loved for them to discuss that to like relitigate it. And I
yeah,
agree, Kyle, there were so many things that he didn't have to own up for or take accountability for or apologize for. I think he talked about some of them on Watch What Happens Live throughout the season, but it's like not everybody watches all those things. Like we have to
yeah.
get this on the central reunion episode because they were such a big part of the season. I mean, the season was like honestly, there's obviously a lot of Lindsay and Carl stuff, but like there was a lot of Kyle and Amanda stuff this season, a
Yeah,
lot of it,
and
and they got one little segment. And I actually think that one of the reasons why they didn't go down that path more was because the conversation veered towards Amanda talking about her depression and like dealing with some of that and it being like a part of her family history. I almost wonder if that sort of like, and I commend her so much for opening up about that, but I think that maybe that sort of got the conversation in a different direction, and that it might have been harder to like loop it back to like, okay, so Amanda, like you deal with depression. Kyle, what was it like? What do you have to say for calling her a bitch? You know what I mean? It's like, and I'm not
like
defending it, but I'm trying to understand why we didn't get more about it.
I just feel like Andy has gone there before,
Yeah,
where it's like he hasn't been like, I mean, even when Scandival, like season, what was it, 10 reunion of Vanderpump, like
yeah,
he asked really difficult
it
questions
did.
and stuff like that. And so it's like
It was weird.
it was weird. It was, and maybe these conversations were had and it just was like, you know what, this is the narrative. This is a conversation that we want to have around this.
We only have
And
two parts.
we only have two parts, so we're gonna cut. And because I believe I haven't watched the extended version on Peacock yet, that has come out today, but there was something that I saw in the extended version that didn't make the televised version
And we'll
that
get
would
to
have
that.
added a lot of context
Yep.
to to something.
Totally. Yeah. And the last thing about Kyle and Amanda before we jump to Carl and Lindsay, they released a statement this week ahead of Andrea's wedding. They
Mm,
released a statement basically saying, we're very much together. Amanda can't make it to Andrea's wedding, but like, we're good kind of thing. And
yeah,
it was kind of amid all of this, like, it almost feels like fans are like willing her to like
leave him.
leave him basically. And it's sort of
Yeah.
like, I don't agree with any of that, but like, what did you make of the statement and like that whole brouhaha that happened?
I kind of was falling down the Kymanda rabbit hole a la Kate Middleton. Like, where is she? Like, I was going in on the conspiracy theories.
Okay.
I was like, oh, there's a video, there's this, there's that. Like, I was very much like, he cheated on her. She needs to leave him. She's not in Italy because they're broken up. And
Hmm.
how are they going to film this season? Blah, blah, blah. So I fell into that trap. And I do think they're still together, but I do think that their relationship is still in a spot that is fragile.
Okay.
And I think we'll see it play out this upcoming season. But yeah, I still think that they're in this position where and it's unclear to me. Is Kyle going to therapy? Is Amanda going? Are they both going to therapy together? Like,
I never know where that stands, to be honest.
yeah, they need something. And because it does feel as if what they want in life is different.
Hmm.
And Kyle seems like the kind of person that will move the goalpost. Last night, Amanda said how, I was under the impression that we both wanted to move to the suburbs and have kids. And Kyle said, no, I want to move to the suburbs once they're able to ride a bike. Like, what? Like, and then it'll be like, I want to move to the suburbs once we could sell Loverboy for $10 million. And then
Right.
it'll be, so
Right.
it's like, and so I think they need to get on the same page with that of like, I can't live in the city for that much longer. Like
Yeah.
I want a front yard. I don't want to get in an elevator to go walk the dogs and to walk the baby and stuff like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's gonna be some conflict with that.
Yeah. A lot of good points. Okay. So we're going to compare that short segment that we got on Kyle and Amanda to the whatever that was that we got with Lindsay and Carl.
The dumpster fire.
I mean, I don't really. Do you feel like there's anything you need to say about what happened in the season? I feel like it's been discussed. I think it was like a roller coaster of like she had laid the groundwork in the press a little bit ahead of the season for people kind of be on her side. The beginning of the season, everything flipped because of her questioning his sobriety and calling him Cocaine Carl. And then things started to flip more back in her direction because of, the thing with his parents and like the career talks, all these things. So is there anything more that you want to say about what happened actually in the season about Lindsay and Carl before we talk about the reunion?
Well, first and foremost, I have to give my deepest apologies to you, Gibson. And because when you were in LA and we got coffee, I was like, Gibbs, your girl Lindsay, she's looking a little crazy. Like, I don't know. And you were like, you know what? I agree. But I know there's more to the story. So we just have to keep watching. And I said, Gibson, I don't know what could happen for me to change my mind. And then week after week after week, I started leaning more and more towards Lindsay. So all that to say, guys, Gibson is always right. Trust him with everything.
You said it, not me.
So yeah, I mean, this season I was look, it's very clear that these two people do not belong together. If
Mhm.
the season ended and they got married, I think we would be like, shit. Like,
If I
what
had gone
is
to that
this?
wedding, yeah.
Yeah. And so like I'm very happy that they did not end up together. I think Carl and this is
Let it out.
I think he's such a beta. And I say that as a beta, like as Madison LaCroix would say. I do not think he is gosh, and I don't want to say like this, I don't want to be derogatory, but just like not man enough for Lindsay. Like she wants a certain type of man in her relationship that can take care of her in a way that's not financially providing for her and that she has to like she's like a taken care of one like woman where she doesn't have to do anything, but like taken care of in the sense of like you're providing security for the both of us, like we are an equal partnership and we're doing this together. And like Carl literally could not provide that and couldn't comprehend that. And it was literally as if they were speaking two different languages throughout the entire season. And so when we were getting to this reunion stage, I really thought we would address all of that. And I sat on the couch last night and I was like, am I being gaslit? Like, are we not going to talk about it? Or just like how everything was framed was so bizarre.
It was really
Um,
bizarre.
it was so bizarre. And I just couldn't understand it. And yes, I was three margaritas in and a glass of wine, but I still could comprehend that this didn't make any sense.
Yeah, it just felt like it almost felt like they picked out all of the anti-Lindsay fan questions that kind of the framing of every question like basically put her on her back foot before she even got to
Mm-hmm.
answer the question. And I don't
Yeah.
think that was the same for Carl. I don't think he had to. I think the questions that he answered were a little bit more straightforward and he got more of a benefit of the doubt generally. And like for
Yeah.
one of the things that I found really frustrating in the season is like he's known Lindsay for almost 10 years at this point, right? And some of the criticism that he wanted of her of like being soft and tender and like all these things, which by the way was never mentioned on the reunion. They never talked about
Yes.
that, what he wanted about her. That's not who she is. That's not who she is. She has changed for the better in terms of like not giving the reaction all the time, being less activated. She's worked on herself in that capacity, but her personality is her personality.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just not who she is. And I think that he wanted her to be somebody that she was just not, and she's never going to be that person.
Yep.
And that he never had to talk about that on the reunion. And I found that so that was a through line for me most of the season. And I found it really frustrating that he didn't have to explain that.
I found that extremely frustrating. I found it frustrating that even in part one of the reunion, when they were talking about the groomsmen ordeal
Yes.
and making Kyle a flower boy, how it was very clear that he manipulated Lindsay's words or um interpretation. Like he pulled something that she did not say and admitted that she did not say and spun it and made it something else to make her look petty and bad. And to Amanda's point, if she did say that, I don't want Kyle in the wedding, she would have been completely valid in that.
Sure.
But she didn't. And Carl made it as if it was all Lindsay's idea to downgrade Kyle to this flower boy, and make him like a joke or whatever. And that was so unfair. And it was very much like, once it was determined that Lindsay didn't say it, I still feel like the consensus was Lindsay was wrong, you know?
Right,
And
right. It was
like,
like they still felt like she would have said it, basically.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like, yeah, she came up with the flower boy thing as a solution to Carl not including them in his groomsmen group, basically. Like that was
yes.
her solution to something. She did not
But
tell him. Right.
somehow, well, it was your idea. And it was like, no, it was my idea to say we need to include these men in our wedding because they are an influential part of our lives that
And
we
also
spent so much.
it was probably gonna be filmed, probably. So
Yes.
it's like
So
they would have had
like,
to have some sort of role.
yes,
I think being ushers might have been a better role choice, but
probably.
like, you know what? She came up with a solution. Yeah, I think that like I don't know. I just got so frustrated watching this part of the reunion. And like for example, I think you alluded to a clip that's from the extended version of the reunion that I watched this morning, and
Mm-hmm.
it's when they're talking about her questioning his sobriety at the beginning of the season, and
Mm-hmm.
which one she apologized for on the reunion, and then like they all basically like forgot that she apologized essentially,
Yeah,
which was
immediately Kyle
bizarre.
attacked her for it. She's like, I
Yeah,
just said sorry.
exactly. She said sorry for calling him Cocaine Carl and for like, weaponizing some of those things that against him. But what the context that was cut out of the live version that aired on Bravo is that there was sort of like some sort of validity for her to be when she's drunk, subconsciously worrying about maybe what he had put in his body from her perspective because he from her statement he smokes a lot of weed and he had just done mushroom chocolates the weekend before at a music festival and he confirmed that that had happened. So it's like
Yep.
that is context that we never saw on the show because I don't think she brought it up on the show, but then it got cut out of the main version of the reunion. And I think that it obviously she was not right to call him Kogan Carl, to question his sobriety, all those things, but in a way that he's gotten a lot of grace for like processing the information from his parents and saying that they questioned whether they would even marry them. He got a lot of grace in terms of like being able to like work through that information that he got from them. But she got no grace in terms of like, yeah, it's amazing that he's sober and working on his sobriety. But also, how hard is it for somebody who's not sober to be in a relationship with somebody who is newly sober and navigating that and how to be the best partner to that person? None of
Yeah.
that was touched on either.
None of that was touched on. And like, don't come for me, but, and I've never been with someone that's sober, but
Me neither.
Carl is California sober, like seemingly like he does marijuana and he dabbled in mushrooms. That's fine. So like,
Of course.
to make it seem as if he's like this super clean person and that Lindsay was questioning like if he slid back on drug or whatever, it's like no, like yeah, maybe when he is high on marijuana. I always feel weird saying marijuana because I'm like I feel like I say it wrong, like weed or like I don't know, like and I'm from California, I'm like the grass, like I don't know how to say it, but whenever he is on marijuana, maybe his personality is probably a little bit different. Maybe he's a little bit more on edge. He's whatever. And she could see that in him. So when she like, yeah, it provided a lot more context post filming, post the show being aired and stuff. Like, oh, now I get why she would say, like,
Yeah.
what do you mean you're sober right now? Like, why are you saying right now? Like, oh yeah, I get it. Cause maybe he was high earlier or whatever. And for the girls in the extended clip to be like, why are you even bringing that up? Like, why are you even outing him for this? And it's like, because it provides context to the situation. Like
Yeah.
it allows you guys to see why I might say something like that. And like it to me, it's just like him being misleading, like not saying that he's doing those things, like making it seem as if he's this like clean version of sobriety is just like unfair. And again, good on him for not doing and taking the drugs and drinking alcohol, the things that really made
Of
him,
course.
bad Carl. Like, so proud of him for that. But like, be fully transparent about your sobriety journey. Like, James Kennedy is out here smoking weed all the time. He's not drinking. I don't know what else he's doing, but he's not drinking,
Right.
so like, and we know that about him. So like, be open with it. Like
Yeah.
it feels as if he's trying to make himself look holier than thou with it. And like
Especially
that
if he's
is
also judging Lindsay for
for having a
drinking
glass of
wine.
wine.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like a weird and like again, like it's not easy on either side to navigate this. And but like also like Lindsay's not the one who outed him for doing
Oh,
cocaine in the first place.
yeah, that
Exactly.
was
That was Kyle
Kyle.
last season or 2 seasons ago or something. And like I don't know. Again, like I almost feel like weird, like trying to like dissect like somebody's sobriety because like that's not what I'm trying to do. I just think that, and like I'm not excusing Lindsay Carl calling him Cocaine Carl and like saying that's how he was acting. Like that was not okay, and that was fucked, and like she should not have
Yeah.
done that. But
Yeah.
like there's more nuance to it than I think that it was being presented to us, and I'm glad that we have more context on that. Basically,
Yeah, I'm glad we have more context, and it should have been in the televised version of the show
yeah,
instead of, I don't know, seeing Kyle's mullet getting cut off. Like,
right,
give us substance.
right.
Like,
Um, so is there anything else about Lindsay and Carl that we haven't touched on? I feel like, I mean, I liked at the end that she basically said, like, I'm glad he made that decision. It's the best decision that he could have made for me. And, she couldn't see that at the time, but she's glad that he made that decision. Like, and I think that that helped. He clearly needed to hear that. The way that at the end he was like so
yeah, he's
surprised that it didn't go worse that day. And like, I think Wes might have said that on Vile Files, and maybe Paige said that on the podcast she was on. Like, everyone I think expected it to be this big blowout thing, and like it wasn't that. And I think that that is because I'm really not trying to give Lindsay like all the credit in the world, but like in a past season, if this had happened 3 years ago to her, it would have been that. But I think it speaks to like her changing her reactions that she gives people these days, personally.
yeah, and I also think that it had to do with the time that had lapsed
For
between
sure.
filming, ending, and getting the reunion. Like 6, 7, 8 months. Whereas like when we got Scandival, which they're two completely different things, but
Hmm.
it happened, and then 2, 3 weeks later they filmed the reunion. So
Right.
that was a fresh, like if we got this reunion 3 weeks after the breakup, it would be completely different. But no, I think like, I guess there's two things. One,
Yeah.
in the first part, what like I would love so much for Paige and Lindsay to be friends.
Me
Like
too. I loved
I
their
I
little
want
moment
that.
this season.
Yes, I want that so much. So when we came into the reunion, and it really just felt like the girls were so anti-Lindsay and like angry with her for posting a picture and like
Yeah.
for framing us for being Team Lindsay and not Team Carl or whatever. I was like, what the fuck does it matter? One, but two, when Paige found out from Carl, the most unreliable narrator, that Lindsay was supposedly sabotaging a shoot for her.
This
Like,
part.
that drove me insane because out of the entire, like, as we were watching back the entire season, these two, both of them, Carl and Lindsay, would twist around what the other said. And
Yeah.
Carl, in the reunion moments prior, had proven to manipulate things that Lindsay has said to his benefit. So for Paige to take his word as God was so
Kind of shocking.
frustrating.
Yeah.
And it was like, really, like, you're just going to believe what Carl says? Because one, he's scorned by this woman who's like going around on a media tour talking poorly about him at the time. Like, it was around BravoCon. And two, like, I think he was seeing how much people were drawn to her, and he was trying to kind of break up some bonds and stuff and to get back in good graces of some people. And like, I
We also got no
no
details
detail
about
about
what the
it.
supposed sabotaging was. Like,
Yeah,
did
what did
that
she do?
what was
Did she
that? And
cancel the
like,
shoot? Did
right,
she
like what, like why I was so
ruin
frustrated
the
by that too. I'm
plumbing?
glad you brought this up. No, it's like there was
Yeah.
no, yeah, it's like, and also like this is all via a phone call that Carl overheard. So it's like
Yes.
it's kind of a game of telephone. You're right that it's skewed timing that she's gonna hear this. And like again, it's sort of that same thing of like there's no benefit of the doubt. It's like, why are we just believing?
What Carl says when he's angry, he had just broken up with this woman, and she just probably was on a podcast saying that he set her up or whatever. Like,
Yeah,
so of course he's gonna say some fucked up shit about her. And like, I just don't understand why we didn't go into that more
I agree.
and make any sense of it. And then lastly, I'm just curious. So Lindsay, she says at the end that it was the right choice. She appreciates him making the right choice. She just doesn't like how he did it. And Andy jumps in and says, you know, production didn't know that he was going to break up with you on camera and blah, blah, blah. Whenever Andy talks about production, defends production, like I
Right.
raise an eyebrow. Um, did you think that I still think there was some like malpractice in this on Carl's part of
Yeah,
like
like I think that
involving
there's
production?
I think two things can be true, right? And I think it kind of also gets into the question of like Lindsay thinks that he was sort of breadcrumbing and laying the groundwork all season to like break up with her. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't as overt. Maybe it was more of a subconscious thing where because I think he was trying to bait these things out of her all season. Like he
Mm-hmm.
wanted the reaction. And like we would see, like he would say something, she would respond in actually a really calm way. And then he would be like, whoa, whoa. And it's like, well, you actually, it's almost like
Yeah.
he wanted the reaction of her. So I think that that gets
Yeah.
into like, maybe he wasn't the one that called production. Maybe not. Maybe production heard about the fight they had on Sunday, reached out, whatever. Maybe that's
Yeah.
true. So he could have been the one not to call the cameras, but he also can still have gone into that conversation knowing that he was going to break up with her. To me, he brought
Mm-hmm.
such a different energy to that conversation. To me, like he had like a list of things that he was rattling off. Like he was very prepared for that conversation. And it was a different kind of energy that we got from him there than we had gotten all season. There was something different there. And I think to me, it's like, why are we not placing more emphasis on the fact that he literally filmed a lunch with Kyle hours before to like lay the groundwork, as Lindsay
Yeah.
said. Like
Yeah.
I'm just supposed to believe that like they picked cameras back up, which cost money just to document like another fight or to like resolve a fight that we didn't
Yeah.
see. Like, I don't know how that would make sense if they didn't suspect that
Think
it
that
could be a
something was
breakup.
going. Yeah. And how he keeps saying, I didn't go into that conversation wanting to end things. Like, sir, you looked at her with so much disgust the
Yeah,
entire conversation from start to finish. Like, there was not one point where you looked like sympathetic, sad, like, no, you looked at her like she was scum the entire conversation. So for you to be like, oh, you know, I didn't know we were going to break up, like, yes, you did. Yes, you did. Like, what the fuck are you saying? So that drove me insane too. Of like I just feel like I was being gaslit. I was
yeah,
like,
yeah. And it's like, and like, I agree. I agree. I just like that. Again, it's one of those moments where it's like Andy stepped in to like sort of defend the sort of, I don't know, the production like
production.
morality. Yeah, whatever it
Yes,
is.
he
Like,
always has to do that.
right. And like I understand why he has to do that, but like in one foul swoop sort of dismisses like all of what Lindsay's felt about that conversation. It's for some
Hmm.
reason that was also supposed to prove that Carl didn't go into it thinking he was going to do what he did. And like
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I just don't know how those two things like are directly like they can both be true, basically.
Yeah. It drove me insane, you know, and I know Lindsay is polarizing. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to send this to my mom. She's going to be so mad at me for sticking up for Lindsay. Like, I know she's polarizing, but there's something like redeeming about her. I love to watch her. I think she's funny. And I also think she's a girl's girl because one time she posted a picture of herself and I asked her where she got her boots and she replied and let me know. So
There we go.
that is like, you want me to be a fan? You tell me where you got
There
your
we go.
outfit from.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, lastly, Chelsea, I mean, I think we've kind of hit most of the notes from this really like landmark season of reality TV. I really believe that. How do they follow it up? What do you want to see them follow it up with? Like, do you want every single person to come back? Do you want there to be a slight shift?
I
Carl and Lindsay coming back together? Like, what's in your kind of mood board for season 9?
I think we could say goodbye to Danielle. Um, and not like I actually do like Danielle, but I think we could say I think it's time to say goodbye to Danielle. I would like to see Gabby return.
Hmm.
I think it would be fun to bring Sam into the house. To give she's neutral and like I think the other girls like Paige and Amanda like her, Ciara like her, but she's also friends with Lindsay, which I feel like Lindsay needs some
For
support.
sure. She needs a sounding board
Um,
for sure.
and then Sam's also single and fun and crazy. So like I would like that. I think we keep all the boys. And yeah, I don't think the cast needs too much of a shakeup. Even if it was the exact same cast from the season, if we kept Danielle, maybe Sam comes every couple of weekends or something like that wouldn't bother me. But yeah, I would like to see more singles hookups. I would
Me too.
like to see Kyle and Amanda come to a place of like really understanding and supporting one another. And I would like to see something more from Paige than just her being like a good friend and a stylish icon. Like just a
Well,
little bit
we want
more.
this. We want the Spritz drama. We want the Spritz
Yeah,
drama.
give me the Spritz drama. That's what the fighting that I want next season is Spritz times Loverboy. Like I want Paige to walk
A
in
clash of the
first
century.
weekend, Paige and Craig first weekend with a case of Spritz and be like, hey guys, with their Spritz Society hats on. Oh my God, kill
Could
me.
you
That would be so
imagine?
funny.
Oh my God,
That is
that's
like
like
housewife level drama. Like
that.
I would love
It would be the
that.
Summer House equivalent of Kenya Moore bringing her Kenya Moore hair
Can
care
you more hair
marching
care?
band.
Yes.
It'd be the same. It'd be the same thing. The same effect.
Give me that page. Give me that.
Wow,
Get
Chelsea,
messy.
your
I
mind.
know.
That
That
was
would be really
good. Oh my
good.
God. Oh, well, I'm sorry. We went a lot over our time, but I think it was kind of necessary
Oh my God, I
for us.
loved gabbing with you.
I
I
loved
feel so
gabbing with
honored
you.
that you asked me to come on and
I,
talk Summer
I mean,
House.
listen, I think that
So
we've been like social media connected for a little bit, but we really connected at BravoCon, and I just we had the best time together all on that
yeah.
red carpet, and just I just I was listening to you doing some interviews there, and I was just like, Chelsea knows what she's talking about. Chelsea like gets the deal, and it's just
Thanks,
and
Gibson.
I love your podcasts, and you think about these things similarly that I do, but I also I changed it up this episode with you because I learned some stuff from the way that you're thinking about it, so I appreciate that.
Thanks. Oh, love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have me
Well,
on anytime.
anytime, where can people listen to your podcast? I know they're in different like podcast feeds and stuff. So tell people where they can find more from
Yeah.
you.
So you could go to We're Obsessed. You just follow Ringer Dish feed on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And Morally Corrupt is Ringer Reality vertical. So that is also, if you are a Death, Taxes, and Bananas, Johnny Bananas fan for the challenge, if you like Survivor, we have Tyson talking about Survivor. Lots of fun stuff. And We're Obsessed is literally everything that me and my co-host Jody Walker are obsessed with, from reality TV to docu-series, true crimes, cults, TikTok drama, like all of it.
You
So
name it.
it's a catch-all. So anything you're interested in, anything you're obsessed with, we're probably obsessed with too. So just like join the obsession with us.
Obsessed. Love it. Well, Chelsea, thank you so much for doing this, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Gibbs.
I want to gab.